program. We now move back over to the Middle East for our next story, where Iran may soon allow American inspectors into its nuclear facilities, but only if talks with the US succeed. Tehran's nuclear chief, Mohammad Islami, says Iran could reconsider its long-standing ban on US inspectors if a deal is struck that meets its demands. The inspectors would be conducted under the United Nations' nuclear watchdog, the IAEA. Let's take a listen in to the chief.
شرایط کنونی مذاکرات اگر که مطالبی مطرح بشه و توافق بشه و خواسته های ایران مورد نظر قرار بگیره، اون موقع ما در پذیرش بازرسی آمریکایی از طریق آژانس اون موقع تجدید نظر میکنیم.
The comments come as Iran and the US prepare for a possible sixth round of talks aimed at reviving a nuclear agreement. President Donald Trump, now in office, has reinstated his maximum pressure policy and imposed new sanctions on Tehran. Despite decades of tension and no formal diplomatic ties since 1979, both sides have held 5 rounds of high-level talks in recent weeks. The talks focus on Iran's uranium enrichment, a central sticking point. Washington says it could lead to nuclear weapons. Tehran says its program is strictly civilian. Negotiations could resume soon, but Iran's president and his foreign minister, currently in Oman, say a date to be set is in the coming days. We're now joined by Cliff Smith, who is a national security and government affairs professional located in Washington, D.C. Thank you very much, Cliff, for joining us on the program. What does this, let's say a deal is reached between the US and Iran, what does this mean for the region of the Middle East?
Well, I think you need to start a little bit before then. You need to understand why Iran's coming to the table in the first place. This is not happening in a vacuum. They rejected talks for a very long time after we pulled out of the first Iran deal, and they're doing it now because they are weak. They have been revealed to be significantly less stronger in where their proxies are located throughout the Middle East. Israel decimated Hezbollah, almost literally. Hamas is on its last legs. Even the Houthis in Yemen, all of whom backed by Iran, are not doing well. And so you have to look at the fact that they are not in a position of strength. These talks come from a position of weakness, from my point of view. So you got to look at what is the Trump administration trying to accomplish. They want something where Iran is not trying to stretch its influence across the region. That is the same thing that the Obama administration wanted roughly 10 years ago when the first Iran deal came down the pike. Now, you can make an interesting case for whether or not we should have pulled out in the Iran deal in the first place, but there was no doubt that it was a deeply flawed deal, that much of which would have already expired even if we had stayed in it the entire time, and Iran's nuclear ambitions remain. So the real question is have they done anything to actually change Iran's nuclear ambitions, or to significantly rein in its rampaging across the region with its proxy groups and creating destruction? All available signs, from my point of view, point to no. They haven't really changed. The fact that Iran is still talking about pauses on its nuclear program rather than ceasing it, the fact that they are quite clearly, to me, buying time, just shows to me that we're basically facing the same issues we faced 10 years ago under slightly different circumstances. Iran's a little bit weaker. Perhaps the Trump administration has a little bit more political incentive to push them harder, but fundamentally we're faced with the same impasse. I don't expect that to change unless the Trump administration really ratchets up pressure and continues to really stick the screws to them to a point where they don't have a choice. In fairness, all of the talk about Israel perhaps striking Iran might be coordinated. And even if it's not coordinated, it might have the effect of making Iran even more nervous. I do think sustained pressure of this kind, sustained threats, of real threats to what they're trying to accomplish across the region by Israel, by the United States, that could change regional dynamics. But I don't think we're there yet. And I would be surprised if we got there in the next few days or even the next few months. I think that's something that would require a lot more dedication for many actors than we've seen at this time.
Yes, Cliff, do you think the IAEA can really ensure transparency? Let's say they do reach a deal with this as a point. Do you think it can ensure transparency if Iran controls who gets access to its nuclear development program?
No, I don't think that the IAEA can do those sort of things when they are dealing with good faith actors that are actually trying to act in good faith. If the Iranian regime is doing that, it will be the first time in its history. They have been the masters of bad faith. No government is immune from that, but the Iranians are particularly bad actors. I think the IAEA having serious access and really being able to verify, disarmament and things of that, and lack of capability to make nuclear weapons is a fiction at this point, and I don't see that changing in the near future.
Cliff, one final question. What do you think of the communication between Tehran and Washington, at least on the public front? We know they've had some mainly indirect talks, but some brief direct talks as well. We've also seen public statements by Donald Trump on his Truth Social platform, threats at times, sometimes in news conferences saying that the talks are going very well, and then Tehran objects to this. What have you thought about the communication between Tehran and Washington?
I mean, the Trump administration likes to do this thing where it makes a big, huge claim, and then they sort of, say they've gotten the moon, and then let the other side sort of catch up and try to, then try to sell whatever they do get as a victory. It strikes me as this is the same playbook they've gone by many times before. It can, under some circumstances, provide some amount of, it can move things in the right direction, but not always. And it can also lead to disillusionment and, frankly, selling the status quo as some kind of achievement with, cosmetic at best changes. My guess is, at this point, we've seen nothing other than cosmetic talks and the Iranians buying time. I have sincere doubts that we're going to see something that's actually going to change the status quo over the long term.
Cliff Smith, thank you very much for joining us on the program. We now move over to the United States.